Alfred Hitchcock mortgaged his house to make a cheap black and white horror film that his own studio refused to fund. What they dismissed became the biggest hit of his career and a film that rewired cinema from the inside out. Psycho isn't just a thriller with a twist ending. It has a twist structure, one so daring it unwittingly turns the audience into an accomplice before they realize what's happened. Hitchcock didn't just kill his leading lady, he killed the rules of film. The story of Psycho doesn't begin in Hollywood. It begins in rural Wisconsin, in a quiet farming community where a man named Ed Gein lived under the suffocating influence of his domineering mother. When she died, he sealed off her rooms and withdrew into isolation. Early newspaper reports, limited by what editors were willing to print, hinted at grave robbing and grotesque keepsakes fashioned from unearthed bodies. Robert Bloch, a novelist living only about 40 miles away, followed the story closely. Without the later, fully revealed details, he imagined not the literal crimes, but the psychology behind them. What kind of mind fails to accept a mother's death? What happens when dependency becomes identity? Guided by then popular Freudian ideas, Bloch created a character who wouldn't simply mourn his mother, but absorb her. This idea became the foundation for the character of Norman Bates. Bloch decided to place Norman in a small, isolated roadside motel, an unremarkable American setting that allowed strangers to wander in and never be heard from again. His heroine, Mary Crane, was a woman on the run after stealing $40,000 from her employer, an amount deliberately echoing numbers in the early reporting on Gein's victims. In the novel, Mary is murdered in the shower by page 40. Her entire story functions as an elaborate misdirection, masking Norman's divided identity. It took Bloch only 6 weeks to write Psycho. When it was published in 1959, the film rights sold in a blind auction for $9,000. Bloch later discovered the buyer was Alfred Hitchcock. And this is where the story really turns. Hitchcock was coming off one of his largest and glossiest productions, North by Northwest, a colorful, glamorous chase film, full of set pieces, stars, and studio polish. He could have gone even bigger for the next picture. Instead, he deliberately pulled the plug on spectacle. For Hitchcock, low budget wasn't a limitation, it was liberation. He noticed how small independent horror films, often made quickly and cheaply, were performing well at the box office. What, he wondered, would happen if he applied that model to a director of his stature? Could a stripped-down thriller, shot like a television episode, hit even harder? Paramount, his home studio, didn't think so. They disliked Bloch's book, refused to finance the film, and wouldn't give him their sound stages. But Hitchcock, one of the most powerful filmmakers in the world, simply found another way. He mortgaged his own home to pay for the production. He hired his Alfred Hitchcock Presents television crew to keep costs low. He shot the film in black and white, partly to control expenses and partly to avoid showing vivid red blood that the production code would reject. He even deferred his usual $250,000 directing fee in exchange for owning 60% of the film. With those decisions, Psycho became Hitchcock's most radical experiment. But he wasn't only breaking financial rules. He was about to break narrative rules that Hollywood considered untouchable. When audiences sat down in 1960, everything about the film's opening signaled a familiar Hitchcock thriller, a star actress, an illicit romance, a criminal temptation, and a dangerous escape. The camera draws us through Phoenix in a voyeuristic sweep before settling on Janet Leigh's Marion Crane. Don't forget, if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like and subscribe button for more videos just like this one. Hitchcock uses subjective close-ups and point-of-view shots to stitch the viewer directly to Marion's experience, her guilt, her panic, her hope, her vulnerability. For 45 minutes, almost half the film, we follow only her. Her story dominates the narrative. We want her to succeed, even when she's making terrible choices. Hitchcock understood that identification is momentum. If we stay in her head, we stay on her side. And then, in the shower scene, he destroys it. The shock of killing the apparent protagonist wasn't just a twist, it was a structural earthquake. Hitchcock didn't simply remove a character, he removed the audience's emotional compass. Suddenly, everything we've been aligned with evaporates in a matter of seconds. This is where Hitchcock's manipulation becomes even more audacious. Instead of presenting Norman as a monster,
Mother, oh God, Mother, blood.
the film makes him appear terrified and dutiful, horrified by Mother's violence, desperate to clean up her crime. It's a masterclass in narrative misdirection. After losing Marion, the camera attaches itself to Norman. We go from rooting for her to rooting for him, not because he's innocent, but because Hitchcock forces us into his perspective. No mainstream film had ever played with audience allegiance like this, and this psychological sleight of hand wasn't accidental. Hitchcock and screenwriter Joseph Stefano leaned directly into Freudian storytelling. The Bates house, its towering upper floor, ground-level living spaces, and shadowy basement mirrors, Freud's model of the mind, superego above, ego at ground level, id below. Norman shifts through these levels physically and psychologically, his identity sliding between himself and the mother he cannot release. Stefano softened the novel's older, overweight Norman into someone boyish, lonely, sympathetic someone the audience could, at least briefly, trust.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
That trust is exploited carefully. Scenes between Norman and Marion are filmed with shifting dominance. At times, Norman seems childlike and small. At others, the camera frames him as looming, strange, unpredictable. His hobby of taxidermy becomes a metaphor for emotional preservation, an inability to let anything die. This combination of low-budget methods, narrative rule-breaking, and psychological depth produced a film unlike anything Hitchcock had made before. But even then, he wasn't certain it worked. The first rough cut left Hitchcock uneasy. The film felt slow. The tension was missing. Stefano called it flat. For a moment, Hitchcock considered cutting it down and turning it into a two-part episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Everything changed with the music. Bernard Herrmann, one of cinema's greatest composers, ignored Hitchcock's instructions to omit music from the shower scene. Instead, he wrote the piercing string attack that has since become one of the most recognizable musical cues in film history. Hitchcock later admitted that Herrmann had been right and credited him with 1/3 of the film's overall effect.
Sometimes, when she talks to me like that, I feel I'd like to go up there and curse her and leave her forever.
Now, Hitchcock needed the perfect rollout strategy, one as unconventional as the film itself. There were no advanced critic screenings, no revealing stills, no plot hints. The trailer was a playful tour of the Bates Motel with Hitchcock as host. And most famously, theaters were instructed to refuse admission once the film had begun, a rule that forced audiences to arrive on time and created queues around the block. It became the first modern event movie. The secrecy paid off. Psycho earned more than $15 million in its first year, an enormous sum at the time, instantly becoming the highest-grossing film of Hitchcock's career. Critical reception shifted quickly. What some reviewers initially dismissed as lurid sensationalism was reinterpreted as a boundary-pushing thriller and a landmark in psychological horror. Janet Leigh earned an Academy Award nomination. The film's influence spread rapidly, touching De Palma, the Coen brothers, Carpenter, Hooper, and generations of filmmakers exploring fractured identity, voyeurism, and the vulnerability of everyday spaces. And all of it began with a novel written in 6 weeks, inspired loosely by a man in Wisconsin whose crimes blurred grief and madness. Bloch imagined a killer who couldn't let go of his mother.
It's not as if she were a maniac, a raving thing. She just goes a little mad sometimes.
Hitchcock transformed that idea into a cinematic experiment, shot cheaply, scripted boldly, structured with mischief, and delivered with a ruthlessness that Hollywood had never seen. Psycho didn't just redefine Hitchcock's career, it redefined the thriller, it redefined horror, and it proved that sometimes breaking the rules financially, narratively, and psychologically is what makes a film immortal.
We all go a little mad sometimes, haven't you?